done by 325.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Minucci.
we are live, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll call the City of Albuquerque Intergovernmental Legislative Relations Committee to order for April 2nd. We have a post-legislative session agenda today, so thank you everybody for being here. Our first briefing is from our state lobbyists, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Park. Who goes first?
Thank you. I'll go first, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. So going through everything, all the capital and everything, I feel like as it relates to our overall effort, I think it was exceptional. There are some areas I think we could have done better. But in general, I would say that the city of Albuquerque and the professionals and the team all did just an exceptional job. One of the questions that I was asked at our last meeting, Madam Chair, and you weren't there, was there capital in House Bill 2? And there was. That was where some of that housing money had been. I would also like to report that there was an additional $200 million put in there for water trust board projects, which is a big deal because there's already 20% of the available capital going to water trust board. And I think the water trust board is worth mentioning because it's sort of the future of capital as far as I can tell, because it's a process that's administered by the New Mexico Finance Authority, and there's a considerable amount of rigor in that process. So projects are evaluated for how well they've been planned and designed. And so they don't get money for construction until they meet other thresholds. And I think given the way, with all the money that's lying fallow capital, I think that's the future. So something that we should examine more closely and in some respects try to mimic that process. The other thing I'll say, and this would probably be better left to Mr. Park, but you know, in the aftermath of the session and the unfortunate events down in Las Cruces, there was talk by the governor of calling everyone back this week even to talk about some crime things. I think that has sort of faltered a little bit, but I think it's inevitable that the legislature will be called back into a special session, perhaps in a couple of months. I also think it's likely that the legislature will be called back into a special session later in the year to deal with what's happening in DC, and perhaps Mr. O'Donnell has a feel for that when the appropriate time would be. The important takeaway from my perspective, Madam Chair, is that things are definitely fluid. So if you look at like what happened with issues like paid family leave, which was an incredibly, it was a big issue for the session. The fact that that didn't pass meant that they didn't have to pay for it. So there's money there that on projects like that where money was set aside or contemplated that wasn't used. And so in my conversations with the governor's office, I think one of the potential inducements to legislators and member communities, et cetera, to participate sort of fully in a special session would be the lure of additional capital funding going out the door. So I think that's something we should just always keep in our mind, that that's a possibility that we might be able to pursue additional capital funding if we went into a special session.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Is there any questions for Mr. Thompson? Thank you for that update. And it's interesting to hear what's transpiring right now related to special session discussion. So thank you for that update. Mr. Park?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I would just echo Joe's comments. The team worked really, really well. We actually had a very, very successful session. It was, I mean, every session is different. This session was certainly unique in the shotgun approach of trying to front load some of the public safety, the competency bills, and then circle back and do them again. The entire team worked incredibly well, and we had a very, very successful session. We had lots of input with respect to the competency legislation, the public safety legislation. we were also able to work together and Madam Chair, a lot of credit goes to the counselors as well as the mayor to help thwart or negate legislation that would have had a really pretty significant adverse impact upon the city and city operations. Thank you to them for making the phone calls and getting in touch with our legislators so that they could understand on a firsthand basis what would have been the effect of some of those legislation and those bills passing. We are currently right now in the midst of the bill signing period. The bills are getting up to the governor, they're being reviewed, and there is outreach being done by the governor to either stakeholders and stakeholders reaching out to the governor's office to either urge a signature or a veto. All of this stuff will be playing out in the next 8 days or so left. I think 7 days left. What day is today? Today's Thursday, Wednesday. So I think we have about a week left. Still coming back from the session, my days have run together. And then I do want to follow up with the two things that Mr. Thompson really hit on, and they're really important. The governor was, I mean, you don't have to do more than read the newspaper to know that the governor is very frustrated about the lack of progress with respect to some of the public safety legislation, in particular juvenile crime. The issue in Las Cruces did not help, and I think it really did increase the likelihood of there being a special session. Simultaneous to that, there is real concern about federal funding for a wide array of state programs, not to mention, at the least, including Medicaid. And that is we rely very heavily on the federal government for that. And if it's going to be cut or it's going to have, the federal government is going to withhold payments, that will result in a pretty significant impact upon our state budget. Our state budget was passed, HB2. The reserves, I think, currently sit at about 33 to 34%, so they're huge. We have a wide cushion. But if the federal government's actions were going to result in a significant decrease in payments for some of our programs, including Medicaid, that would require the legislature to come back and rebalance the budget. And Chairman Munoz at the end of the legislature was talking about the worst thing that they've ever done is not say no to people, is start cutting people. And if the federal government continues to withhold, that means we're going to actually have to start cutting programs, and we're going to have to make some really tough decisions. Hopefully that won't happen. We'll have to wait and see, but it really is an incredibly fluid situation. The legislators in the governor's office are very attuned to it, and they are waiting to see how it shakes out in the next couple months. And then one of the questions will ultimately be whether or not they do one or two special sessions. Typically, and I think the governor knows this and has learned these lessons, special sessions are usually successful when they are narrowly tailored, and it's difficult to throw public safety and a pretty significant budgetary issue at the same time. So there may be two, depending upon where we land over the course of the next fiscal year on those two issues. So that's my report, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Park. Very thorough. Is there any questions for Mr. Park? Appreciate the information and the implications around two topics and how they don't necessarily blend well for a special session.
Madam Chair, this is Mr. Minicucci.
Yes, Mr. Minicucci.
Just a quick add-on. Going back to Joe's report. Last year, when we met with legislative services staff in, I think it was November, they had said, and we'd heard repeatedly throughout the year, that there's a high possibility that the one reform for capital outlay they do institute this year is to call for capital outlay requests or applications in June. In other words, they may have to be due in June. I don't know if Mr. Thompson's heard any more on that, but just as a kind of a note, so that in case when our May meeting comes, if there has been a call that we may be having to get ready for capital outlay. But I don't know if Mr. Thompson wants to add to that.
Never been.
Mr. Thompson, go ahead.
Yeah, I have not heard that notion has much traction, but it is something I will check with Callie Carswell at LFC to see if there's traction sufficient, making it something that we need to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci and Mr. Thompson. If we have no questions for our state lobbyists, Councilor Feeblecorn.
Chair, I just had a question. We asked this last year and I don't remember if we ever had any results, but we have some serious issues around getting our capital outlay through DOT as opposed to anywhere else. And we were looking into like if we could influence that at all for capital outlay projects, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Councilor Feeblecorn, it's worse than even that, because if you look at the one effect of the session, the funding for the Department of Transportation was totally upended this session. So I don't know how they're going to resolve that. I think one of the complaints of the administration of Secretary Cerna and others is they have to rely every year on funding and plan accordingly. And when you have huge projects that are years long, it's really hard to do it in a way that doesn't cost more money. So Chairman Munoz and the Senate said, let's do severance tax bonds that set up like 3 or 4 years of funding so they can plan better. And that failed. So I think we are going to continue to have the problem that you've mentioned where we're having problems lag. I do have a potential solution because in my conversations with DOT Secretary Cerna and his key staff, they want to do a good job. They want to do it right. And they want folks to be able to access money and get projects done. And I think we are a big enough player in this that we could take our leadership team or technicians and sit down with them and try and see if there are things that we could do that would help facilitate getting things done quicker. So I think it's definitely worth talking about.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am definitely supportive of that. I'm also supportive of finding out if there's a way to influence that some of our capital outlay not go through the DOT. In past years, it hasn't all gone through DOT. Some of it's gone through other departments. So I would support trying to find out if we can influence where it goes. And then if things do go to the DOT, I would definitely encourage us to have a leadership meeting with Secretary Cerna.
Thank you, Councilor Feeblecorn. I think you're absolutely on point that we need to take both avenues as ways for us to encourage funding flow and timeliness of that towards the city's projects. So we'll make note of that and make sure we do. Thank you. With that, our next item is an update from our federal lobbyist, Mr. O'Donnell. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I have a brief report. I'll focus on the FY26 earmarking process, reconciliation, and some comments on grant funding. So as Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Minicucci have heard from me over the past 2 weeks, the appropriations process for FY26 was unofficially opened by Senator Heinrich and Senator Lujan. There's been no Senate appropriations or House appropriations guidance issued up until today. And today, the House Appropriations Committee issued member guidance, and most of the deadlines for members to submit their projects to House subcommittees are in May. And it's an interesting scattering. It's either May 2nd or May 23rd. Now, Senator Heinrich does not have a deadline. Senator Lujan does have a deadline of April 15th, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. As you recall from previous briefings on earmarking by the New Mexico delegation, Senator Heinrich has this two-step process where you submit your requests, and his staff, both locally and in Washington, vet those projects. And then if there's an interest in follow-up, they get back to you about more information for projects that they think they have the best opportunity to get funded. On the House side, Congressman Vasquez actually put out something about 2 weeks ago and said that March 28th was his deadline for submitting earmark requests. As of today, he's moved that date to this Friday, which is April 4th, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. So he's collected some earmark requests, but if the city had sent him anything, you can reopen that submission and alter it in whatever ways are appropriate and send that to him by Friday at 5 p.m. Congresswoman Stansberry and Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez have not updated their websites based on today's announcement by the House Appropriations Committee, but I expect in the next day or so, they will have updated their website. And I would look for them. I just think that because they haven't had any guidance at all, other than to look at what they do have for the FY25 submissions in terms of guidance, since they've got nothing really updated yet, I would think that you're probably looking at at least another week after this that would be open for the city to submit appropriations requests. And I also just sent, because it came out today on the House side, the guidance that went to members about the number of projects they can request. It's still 15 per member. And as Chairman Cole of the House Appropriations Committee did last year, he's limiting the amount of earmark money to be 0.5% of the discretionary funding that's approved every year. That is half of what the Democrats were doing when they were in charge of the House. I mentioned the subcommittee deadlines that members have to have their requests in. We really have about 5 committees that are ones the city looks at for earmarking. It's Commerce, Justice, and Science. Their deadline is May 2nd. Energy and Water Development is May 23rd. Homeland Security is May 23rd. Interior and Environment is May 2nd. And THUD is May 23rd. So we'll take questions about the appropriations process at this point if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Any questions? No questions from the committee?
Madam Chair, can I say a few things about reconciliation at this point?
Absolutely, sure. Absolutely, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, so as you know, this reconciliation package is a way that Congress goes back when they have a new spending bill or they have a tax bill, they have to go look for the revenue for that to pay for that tax bill or offset it. So that's what drives the reconciliation process. The House has finished its reconciliation bill. The Senate has drafted its, and as you might have heard in the press, they're expecting to work into the weekend on the Senate side, voting on their reconciliation package, which is, I've not gone through it for the details, but what I've heard is that the Senate version is not quite as draconian as the House version. And they're going to have to resolve those differences in a conference. And then they are going to be writing a tax bill at the same time. So I had thought that this process may be done by sometime in June, but I spoke with a former staff director from an authorizing committee that has a lot of programs under review. He's no longer there, but I mean, he was talking from his experience when he participated in this once before. And his comment to me the other day was he doesn't see the reconciliation bill and package being done until sometime this summer. So to the point that was made earlier about the impact of Medicaid spending in New Mexico, we may not have clarity on that for some time, which brings me to a point that was raised by Senator Lujan when we talked about reconciliation in his office when Councilor Grout and Councilor Rogers were here for the National League of Cities meeting. He made a point of making sure that the councilors spoke to their colleagues at this conference who were from states that were red states. And to make sure, and I also heard him say this to county officials too, to make sure that those states understand the importance of Medicaid and tax exempt financing instruments to local government. We've been speaking with the National Association of Counties, the National League of Cities, about their outreach to all of their state leagues about this issue. And just today, I was in touch with the New Mexico Association of Counties about this issue to make sure that they're talking or they're involved with NACO in terms of what they're trying to do to make sure that all members of Congress understand how important Medicaid spending and tax exempt financing are to local governments. I'll conclude by just saying that it was interesting hearing today in front of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee and Secretary Sean Duffy from Transportation was the witness that they had invited today to talk about what is happening with the freeze on federal funding and the review of federal grants that are still at the department and haven't been what they call contract agreements, grant agreements have not been signed. And he assured Senate members, both sides of the aisle, that they were working diligently at the department to get these grant agreements signed and out the door. And what we thought might turn into a little bit of a discussion about reauthorization of surface transportation legislation wound up being really members on both sides of the aisle talking to the secretary about projects in their state, which they wanted to make sure get funded. Madam Chair, that is the entirety of my report, and I'll be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Any questions about this portion with Mr. O'Donnell from the committee? Nothing? Thank you. Thank you for that thorough. I appreciate you walking us through all of that. We'd like to claim it's simple, but it's often very complex. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the status of our federal community projects grants, Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Minicucci. I know, Mr. Minicucci, you may have a proxy.
Yeah, I'm still here, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Minicucci.
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and start for our group, then turn over to Mr. Parkinson. This basically, at this point in time, Council Services has determined all of the applications it's going to mail in or send in. We have sent in all our applications to Senator Heinrich and Representative Vasquez, and we will this week be sending them into Senator Lujan and then tracking Senator Representative Stansberry's websites to when hers will be due. And that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci. There you are, Mr. Parkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Really on the administration side, we have got all of ours in for Vasquez and for Heinrich that are resubmittals from FY25 and wrapping up Lujan's here today. And then once we get the Stansberry link, we will resubmit the one project we have for Stansberry. But then other than that, anything new for FY26, we're just finishing up determining who goes where and what goes where. And we are really basically ready to hit send on a lot of that. So that's my update.
Thank you, Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Minicucci. Any questions for either of them on those topics? I know it's more logistics report.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. O'Donnell.
I should have mentioned, and I've discussed this with both Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Minicucci, just to be clear about the 25 appropriations process. because it was a continuing resolution, there were no earmarks contained in the bill. But when Councilors Grout and Rogers met with the delegation during the National League of Cities meeting, Rebecca Avizia, and the Chief of Staff to Senator Heinrich and the senator who met with them said, we are going to prioritize your 25 requests that were submitted and were put in appropriations bills. That doesn't mean you have to stick with those as priorities, but if you want them to be considered, the senator said, I want to let you know that we will make a priority of that 20 FY25 request in the package in FY26. And we heard the same from Senator Lujan and from Congressman Vasquez about that.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell, for that clarification. And thank you, Councilor Grout, for your meetings in DC. It's always good for the city of Albuquerque to have those conversations face to face, and I appreciate that you all represented us well. Any other questions? I do know that I appreciate the teams on all sides making sure that we meet all the timelines and get everything submitted. And I know you all are working diligently, so I appreciate that. I know we all do, that we don't have to wonder if anything got submitted on time, because I know you guys are working towards those deadlines. Okay, with that, we have other business. Is there any other business of the committee?
No, ma'am, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minicucci. Thank you all for your time today. With that, we will adjourn. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.